There is a man I never apologized to. He died before I could. And I've been carrying that silence for 53 years. I am 91 years old. I have outlived most of the people who mattered to me. My hands shake now when I hold a cup of coffee. My voice is not what it was, but my memory is sharp in all the wrong places. This is not a story about music. It is not a story about success or failure or the life I built. It is a story about one afternoon in October of 1973 in a town called Belzoni, Mississippi, where I did nothing, and where doing nothing cost a man everything. We'd been driving for 11 hours. The tour bus had a cracked radiator, and we pulled off Highway 49 into the first town we could find. It was a Wednesday, around 3 in the afternoon. The sky was the color of old paper, flat and colorless. The kind of sky that feels like it is pressing down on you. The diner was called Patsy's, a hand-painted sign, red letters on white wood, faded from the sun. There was a screen door that made a sound like a rubber band snapping every time it opened. I went in ahead of the others. I needed to sit somewhere quiet. There was a man playing piano in the corner. Not a stage. Not even a proper area for music. Just an upright piano pushed against the wall near the restrooms. Its finish peeling at the corners. 3 of the keys yellowed to the color of old teeth. And this man was sitting there playing as if the rest of the world did not exist. He was old even then, maybe 75, thin the way men get when they have lived hard and eaten little. His name, I would learn later, was Earl Dupree. He had been playing in that diner, I was told, for going on 12 years. Not for pay. He played because the owner, Patsy herself, let him eat there for free in exchange for the music. That was the arrangement. He was playing something I did not recognize. Not blues exactly, not gospel exactly. Something in between, something that felt like both a question and an answer at the same time. I sat in the booth closest to him. I ordered coffee. I listened. There were 5 other men in the diner. 3 of them were local. 2 of them were part of my crew. One of the local men sitting at the counter was large and red-faced and had the look of someone who had been drinking since noon. He was loud. He kept turning on his stool and looking at Earl. After about 10 minutes, this man said something. I will not repeat it exactly, but he used a word that no man should use, directed at another man, and he said it loud enough for the whole room to hear. Earl did not stop playing. That is the thing I remember most. He did not stop. His hands kept moving over those keys, steady and unhurried, as if the word had simply passed through him like smoke. The man at the counter said it again. This time, Earl's hands paused for just a moment, just a half second, and then he continued. Everyone in that room heard it. My crew heard it. Patsy, behind the counter, looked down at the surface she was wiping and kept wiping it, long after it was clean. And I sat in my booth and I drank my coffee. I told myself it was not my place. I told myself it would only make things worse. I told myself a dozen things in the space of about 4 seconds, and every single one of them was a way of saying I was afraid. Not of the man at the counter. I had faced bigger men than him. I was afraid of the scene, the noise of it, the attention. We were on a tight schedule, and the bus needed repairs, and I did not want the complication, so I said nothing. After a few minutes, the man at the counter got up, paid, and left. Earl finished his song. set his hands in his lap, sat very still for a moment. Then he looked over at me, just once, and I do not know what he saw in my face, but he gave me a small nod. Not friendly exactly, something more resigned than that, like a man who had been nodded at instead of helped so many times that he had stopped being surprised by it. He started playing again. I finished my coffee. We left when the bus was ready. I thought about him for a few days. Then the tour picked up pace, and the weeks blurred, and I stopped thinking about him the way you stop thinking about a bruise once it fades. 12 years later, I was in Memphis for a recording session. I ran into a man who had grown up in Belzoni. We were talking about that part of the state, and I mentioned the diner, Patsy's. I asked if he knew the piano player. He did. Earl Dupree had died in January of 1974, 3 months after that afternoon. A stroke, alone in a boarding house on the edge of town. He had no family that anyone knew of. There was no service. But here's what the man told me, and this is the part that I have never been able to set down. Earl Dupree had been, in the 1950s and 1960s, one of the most recorded session pianists in the Mississippi Delta. He had played on dozens of recordings for labels out of Chicago and Memphis. Not as a frontman, never credited, just hands on keys, unnamed, essential, invisible. Some of the recordings he played on were songs I had learned as a boy, songs that shaped the way I heard music, songs that lived in my fingers before I even understood what I was doing. And I had sat 3 feet away from him, and I had said nothing. Not when it mattered, not ever. I do not know what I would have said if I had walked over to that man at the counter. I do not know if it would have changed anything about Earl's life or his death. Probably it would not have. But I know this. I know that Earl Dupree looked across that diner and saw a room full of people who chose silence. And I was one of them. And I was not a quiet man. I was a man who had spent his whole life asking to be heard. And I could not extend that same thing to someone else when it cost me something. There's a kind of cowardice that does not announce itself. It does not feel like fear in the moment. It feels like reason, like practicality, like it is not the right time, it is always the wrong time, and then the time is gone. I have played on stages in front of hundreds of thousands of people. I have been loved by strangers in ways that still do not make sense to me. But when I sit quietly at night in this house, in this old chair, I do not hear the crowds. I hear an upright piano in a diner in Mississippi. 3 of the keys yellowed, the screen door snapping shut, and a man playing as if the world could not touch him. He deserved better than the world gave him. He deserved better than I gave him. I am 91 years old, and I'm still learning what kind of man I was.